A Letter to Myself with Joel Chua.
You could describe Go Ayat and Sherry Low as big picture people. They're business coaches and lecturers who use visual thinking to help clients and students get a more complete picture of a problem and its possible solutions. And they've also co-authored a book on visual thinking called The STAR System, but more on that later on. Well, together, Ayat and Sherry have 75 years of professional experience combined. And both ladies also made decisions earlier on in their careers to pivot to seek greater meaning and fulfillment in what they did. And they'll be reflecting on some of the most impactful life lessons they've picked up along the way and share them with us in just a little while, and also about how they themselves have grown. Well, despite having met only in 2019, Ayat and Sherry have become very close friends with a chemistry that has fueled their successful professional collaboration. Here's Sherry with how they met.
She claims she picked me up from the dustbin.
Is that a fact, Ayat?
Well, I always, we have always this conversation to say that I think if I met her earlier, I think this relationship would not have happened.
Okay.
Probably because very different mindset. We both like very different things.
And give me an example. How different are the both of yourselves?
Yeah. Sherry likes words. I like numbers. I don't think she likes that quantitative numbers as much as I do.
Oh, you put a dollar sign in front of it. I'm happy to look at it.
Oh, yeah. There I told her she's always interrupting, right?
That's the other universal symbol that everybody relates with.
That's
the dollar sign.
correct. That's
Okay.
correct, yeah. And in some ways, I guess she likes to play. I've never seen anybody have so many Lego sets in their life because I don't even own one. The first one that I got was from her. Yeah, so that was really interesting.
Lego sets, Sherry, and that is an element you use in your teaching as well, I assume?
Yes, I do, actually. I do.
Right.
Yeah, I do incorporate that.
The element of play in the process of learning, right? It's so underrated, but so impactful potentially. Yeah?
That sounds
Even as
really,
adults.
really good. And I totally agree with you. But, full confession, I probably don't play enough when I was younger. I was a very serious learner, really serious, really hardworking, reads a lot, studied all the time. And I think it's making up for lost time.
Right.
So play to me is really, really important.
Okay, so this is part of your own personal, what we might call self-care in a sense. This is how you recharge, right? Yeah. So I'm curious. So how did the both of you meet?
Well, she was trying to discover herself, I think. She attended a workshop that I was conducting. That was actually at NUSS. I was doing a workshop on starting a small business. I think she was actually trying to discover what she wants to pivot to.
Right.
And I have thought, I've been teaching for conducting workshops for the last 30 years. When Sherry started talking to me, I found her to be very serious, very clear in the terms of trying to discover what's the next step. I think from there, we sort of had this conversation going.
Yeah.
I discovered that with that seriousness, maybe we could do something together.
Right.
Yeah. So somehow or the other, we decided to take an assignment together, the first gig together, so-called.
What was that? Share with us that common project.
It was actually got to do with something related to marketing. And because of her background, I approached her and said, why don't we do this together? And it was interesting because I never really conduct a workshop with another person at the same time. So we had this improv. And the discovery, or to our clients, they were so amazed because they were wondering whether we had been doing this for such a long time.
When in fact you had only been doing it together for how long?
That was the first gig.
The first one.
Very first one.
Right.
and that somehow that chemistry sort of sealed. And I guess at a much older age, if we didn't like each other, we probably would have just parted ways, right? But we had this thing about enjoying the same thing, doing this or rather she encouraged me to do the things I normally don't go into. Yeah, and that started this conversation, and we got very serious about wanting to start something
Right.
together.
Right.
And so that's how the training area started together.
Right, I see. The both of you have also come together to write a book. Tell me, what is the book about?
The book is called The Star System. There were 4 things that we wanted to be very clear in sharing it. Number one is there's so many powerful stories out there, be it individuals or corporate or business stories. So if we were to capture this through a visual, there becomes a depository of information that we can use. And then when we look back at our own business, and then we will say, oh, I have a money problem. The stories that I look at, could I just pick up some of the money models that's out there and then look at how I can apply it? So S stands for story. With each of these stories that we share, it is about what takeaways you have from those stories. Hopefully the participants will actually draw their own stories and then find their own takeaway. One simple takeaway would be, if our customer is changing, you have to change what you want to offer. But most people hold their businesses very tight.
Right.
They don't want to let go, and they prefer to do things that they're absolutely comfortable all the time. But all you need to do is that little pivot, and with that takeaway, I guess it has to strike them that this is the trigger that you need to take action. And so the change has to take place. Right. The third one is actually the application. And looking at application, our goal was for them to look at cross-industry application. Could I just turn my head, like I said just now, and then look at, for example, we like to tell this story about SCDF. And as far as the SCDF story is concerned, it's about the fire engine, which we all look at, is really huge. But they built a small fire engine called the Red Rhino to navigate the narrow streets of Singapore. And so with that, we had this prompt: think opposite. So that every time when you have a problem, that could be one of your prompts. That, maybe I could think opposite. Could I make something heavy light? Could I make something inconvenient convenient?
Right, be counterintuitive, turn it on its head. And
That's correct.
That's part of the whole creative process.
That's correct. If it's square, why must it be square? Can't it be round? So in that context, that's what the application is all about.
Right.
And then when we look at the last one, which is reflection, it is more to look at the insights of your business and then say, do I have the financial means to pivot? Do we have the infrastructure to support us? And of course, looking at the right talent to take it from point A and move to point B.
Right. The nuts and bolts.
In a way, yeah.
Okay, so that's the book that the both of you have co-authored,
Yes.
The Star System. So the both of yourselves have been in the teaching, the training, and the education sector for a number of years. And if there's one thing that defines the both of your journeys, it probably could be like what you said earlier, Ayat, the idea of pivoting from one state of life, one state of career choice to another. It's a constant a constant process of adapting and being nimble and agile, right, with change. So if you were to look back, and if you could write that letter to your younger selves, what would you say in that letter to your younger self? Sherry, would you like to share with us first?
I think for me, somehow what Steve Jobs said some years back, seems to resonate, and that he said, "Stay hungry, stay foolish." Hungry, definitely. I'm known to be pretty aggressive in the past, so hungry, not a problem. I think it's stay foolish. If I were to write a letter to my younger self, I would say stay foolish. More than what I did. And that means, you don't just have to look at the sky, standing up. You could be lying flat on the ground and looking up and taking in the view from a different perspective, more risk-taking. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do this or you're not good enough. And maybe alongside with that risk taking is also a trust that someone you can find someone to journey with you, because the road can be tough, especially if you're even as an intrapreneur, for which greater part of my career I was, but. And if you're considering an entrepreneurial journey, that's going to be pretty rough too. But definitely, stay foolish.
Yeah, that's the theme that would define what you would share with your younger self.
Yes.
Why do you think that younger version of yourself would need to hear that, especially that part, stay foolish?
Remember I said I was a really good girl. I studied hard. I never once argued with my parents. I'm a really good girl. I'm also star pupil and all that. It's always doing the right thing, and try not to get into any conflict. So just staying safe in a safe zone, right?
Was that how you were raised? Were those the values and perspectives that you were raised
Yeah,
with?
I can't blame my mom. Maybe it's already, I was born with it. I don't know. I certainly would not like my children to turn around and tell me, "Oh, I'm here because you gave me that." So, in any case, I think I would definitely say, stay foolish. Really believe in yourself. And of course, even if you say safe, you could still get burned. And there's always the risk. But I think that foolish mentality would push you a little bit more beyond, so that you are not held back. And sometimes, it helps you not find excuses to say, I can't do this because this is not agreeable to this person, or it doesn't fit into this, the rules here and all that. And I think if I were more foolish, if my younger self could listen to me, who knows,
I wouldn't have met you.
I'll be an entrepreneur.
Probably much earlier.
What you shared, Sherry, thank you for sharing that. One thing you shared that kind of resonated with me also was the observation or the thought that even if you stay very good, very very guai, very risk averse to use, very safe.
That's the perfect word I was looking for. Very guai.
Very, yeah, guai, the very technical term, very guai, very safe, right? You could still get burnt, right? There's a saying, the biggest risk that we can take is to not take any risk in life.
Yeah, I mean, I would say definitely along that. But I also, at the same time, obviously, with every risk, it just means that you will get, potential of being hurt is there. But hey, maybe it's necessary so that you can, we use the word pivot, but so that you can move from this to something else that may even be better than what you know in the past or what you are heading towards now.
You're listening to Sherry Low, one of the co-authors of a book called The Star System, which is a book on visual thinking. She was sharing, of course, her perspectives on risk-taking and why that was important, and why she felt that would be something important that her younger self would need to hear. When a letter to myself continues in just a little while, Sherry continues with her thoughts and perspectives on the nature of risk-taking, and Ayat will also join in with what she would tell her younger self and why she's thankful that something didn't explode. We'll find out more about that in just a little while as well. Stay with us here on CNA 938. It's just about 3.5 minutes to the 8:30 news. Good evening. Well, thanks so much for staying with us here on A Letter to Myself on CNA 938. I'm Joel Chua. We continue our chat now with Go Ayat and Sherry Low, good friends and business coaches and lecturers who've also co-authored a book on visual thinking called The Star System. They've been reflecting on their journey earlier on in their careers, and now Ayat shares with us what she'd tell her younger self in just a little while. But first, Sherry continues with her reflection on the importance of risk taking.
But it's not a reckless. It is calculated risk here. I mean, when we did improv, it was very clear that we are very different. Out of that difference, however, something unique was born, and that uniqueness that you don't see anywhere else.
Yeah.
So when even with the decision to write the book, you know, I do see that uniqueness can be transferred to the writing itself, simply because we each are unique,
Yeah.
and therefore, when you put together, even
Yeah.
even more.
Yeah, it's so obvious, seeing the both of you interact with each other. It's like when two unique chemicals come together, the reaction is unique in itself, right? That's what they
Thank
call
God
chemistry.
it didn't explode.
Yeah, it hasn't exploded. Well, sometimes you need a little bit of volatility, a little bit of that uncertainty, right?
That's so true.
In order to create something exciting, something new, right?
Yeah, it's important also. In yoga, something that I really love, there's something called play the edge. So when you play the edge, it's a little bit dangerous, but when you get through it, it's very exciting.
Yeah. And then it takes you to somewhere that you had not previously imagined you could be at.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, before I ask you about the letter Ayat that you would write to your younger self, what do you make of what Sherry just shared about the letter that she would write to her younger self?
Actually, after getting to know her, I keep bugging her that she should have started this earlier. Because Sherry has always, she says she's really a good girl. I'm very different from her. Yeah. And I guess that rubs off with each other. Yeah. And for her, she has always been an entrepreneur, comfortable with the infrastructure provided, and yet with the rewards that comes with the organization. Yeah, whereas I was a little different.
Right.
I think probably because in my earlier years I was not
Naughty?
not an R&R person, rule regulated person. Never quite liked anything to do with studying. Yeah, so
It's so interesting that for an outside observer, just looking at the both of yourselves, it's almost like the both of you have switched kind of like personalities almost. The earlier version of Ayat has now become Sherry in a sense, and the earlier version of Sherry has become a little bit like Ayat.
yeah, actually, that's quite true too. Yeah, because now I'm much more serious, more in some ways you call me a workaholic. It's like I'm catching up with time, in the sense that I didn't. If I look back and I say two things that I wish I could tell my younger self,
Yes.
would be to read. And I only started that journey when I turned 48.
Right.
And I guess I needed that discipline. And that's when I decided to do my MBA. And friends who are with me and my classmates they said they have never seen anybody read every word in the textbook.
Read what? What exactly do you read?
The textbooks that have been provided for, the articles, the research materials.
These are academic materials.
Yes, 100% academic materials.
Right.
And I don't know, I just love it. Yeah, and that's when I began to realize that I didn't know a lot of things.
Right.
And that started my journey to stay very focused on the things I like to read. Got to do with creativity, innovation, got to do with business models.
Right. It's almost as if it's opened a whole new world to you.
It is. And today I think it still does in many ways. Yeah, and that's why sometimes when I tell my undergraduate students that it's important to read, they don't understand where I'm coming from, because there are some models when I look at it, or theories that come out of it, and I wish I said, if I knew this 20 years ago, I would have made different decisions out of it. Yeah. And the other thing is to listen. I wasn't a very good listener. And now I look back, I mean, if I had listened to my parents, I probably understood resilience better. If I listened to my colleagues, I probably would have understood what internal networking is about, having to build that resources within the organization. And all the entrepreneurs, because of the kind of work that I do, I meet a lot of entrepreneurs. If I had listened clearly, I would have actually then understood what the external networking is about.
Right. It's so interesting that you focus on the word listen, because on a very basic level, most of us can hear reasonably well, but when you were hearing other people speak, right, you weren't necessarily listening. What were you doing in place of listening?
I think many of us are probably very judgmental. So when somebody says something, we already concluded. So we probably just switch off. Yeah, so I didn't really understood that very well until probably because of entering into this kind of business, that you begin to realize that you are always talking. You're not listening at all. And because after maybe 20 over years or 30 years, then you'll be thinking, I should be learning from my audience.
I'm just wondering also, you said that read more. You would tell your younger self, read, because it opens up new worlds for you, and then listen also. Listen. And I'm wondering, did it require you to have to unlearn something in order for you to acquire this ability and this skill to listen more?
I think it takes a totally different discipline. One that I think have to acknowledge the present, which sometimes we don't. Yeah, so in the context, I find that when I do that better, I too become interesting.
Say more, please.
In a way that it helps connect different parts of the brain, and ideas are generated through that conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
And that conversation continues in just a little while. You were hearing from Go Ayat and earlier Sherry Low, both of them good friends, co-authors of a book on visual thinking called The Star System. Well, they may be very good friends, but, even very good friends will disagree from time to time, especially when they're also business collaborators. So how do they handle those situations? That's coming up in just a little while. Also, the letter they'd write to their future selves. Stay with us here on the letter to myself, coming up in just a bit.
CNA 938.
You're listening to A Letter to Myself. We continue our chat now with Go Ayat and Sherry Low. How do the close friends and business collaborators manage situations when they disagree? Well, Sherry begins with her take on it.
But sometimes we don't agree on some things, and then it becomes what I call an intellectual debate.
Aren't you going to say what
yeah.
Ayat calls it?
Yeah, you say it. I'm not going to put words in your mouth.
Yes, Ayat should say what Ayat calls it.
Yeah.
What does Ayat call it?
Ayat
Oh
calls-
my goodness, I always think we're always arguing.
Yeah.
Or she's always scolding. I said, why you scold me?
I'm like, Ayat, you need to listen first. This is my view. No, your turn. And then after that, we say, okay, the merits of what I say are this. The merits of what you say are this.
Right.
So we take this stance, we arrive at this. What do you think? So I have to remind her that that listening is important.
It's like what your observation of Sherry earlier. Like she tends to work within structures and systems, right? And what you just shared is very kind of illustrative of that, right? It's let me share first, and then it's your turn. There's a structure to this intellectual debate.
Well, she did say she wants to listen. I'm just helping her along.
I want to go back a little bit to this this point that the both of you demonstrated earlier in such a delightful way, right? When you disagree, I mean, both of you obviously are good friends. Both of you have great chemistry, and both of you are business. You're colleagues also, aren't you? when you disagree, how do you manage that disagreement? I mean, Sherry, you shared a little bit about how sometimes you try to give some structure to what you call an intellectual debate, but Ayat would call scolding an argument. But how do you manage when you're in that moment of disagreement so that you emerge from the other side, constructively with that relationship still there?
I think we're old enough. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
You keep saying we're old.
Enough. She's enough. She's old enough.
In a way to respect and trust each other a little more with regard to the opinions that have been said. I may not agree immediately, but if she's right, she will get a visual drawn by me of her idea in my own ways, telling her I agree. So it is not about what I say is scolding or whatever. I think the whole intent is we have a bigger picture we want to achieve. And that is also got to take a look at what we want the readers to come up to benefit from it. Yeah. So
now we want to look a little bit into the future, right? So you began by sharing that letter that you would write to your younger selves, right? For Sherry, it would be be more foolish, take more risks, right? Don't play it safe all the time. There's a space for risk. Yeah. And for Ayat, your letter was read more because it opens up new worlds to you, and listen more instead of, if I can use the expression that's also quite well known, listen to understand rather than listen to respond, right? Now, if you were to write another letter to your future selves, what would you tell that future version of yourselves? Sherry, would you like to begin?
Experiment.
Right.
You got to try. And if it doesn't work out, so be it, try again. And definitely take on new adventures. And you never know what something that you start off as just play can take you to a very different space.
And it's very similar thematically to your earlier letter to your younger self, which is stay foolish, take risks, right? Experimenting involves taking some degree of risk as well, right? And you also bring in the element of play. Play is not just frivolous, is it?
Well, there's nothing wrong with it being frivolous,
there is that element, of course.
But I'm also thinking of the serious part of it, that play can encourage. When you're playing, perhaps you feel more in control of the situation.
You feel safe.
You feel safer, and then you can experiment within the play itself. And of course, you can play with somebody else, play a game with somebody else, a board game and all that. You get to know the other person better, friendships, teamwork, etc. How to collaborate with another person. So there are the other serious part of it too. It's social in a way.
Yeah, but play can yield teachable moments as well.
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Sherry. What about Ayat? That letter to your future self, what would be in that letter?
Wow, this is really hard actually. But if I have one sentence, if there's one sentence that I will probably say is stay connected with myself. I often find that the influencing factor around me affects me more. And I do a lot of things, I guess, sometimes not fulfilling my own real needs. Yeah, so I guess if I learn to love myself more, read more, which means says I will be able to do that better or listen better. I will probably look at that everything will sort of fall in place. Yeah, I mean, that's probably what I would tell my future self.
Remind us again, what was that first sentence to your future self?
I was thinking about stay connected with myself.
Yeah. What do you mean by that, to be connected with yourself? What does it feel like? What does it look like?
I think it's about allowing me being me, I think. Yeah, sometimes in training is quite an interesting thing, you know. It's like you're on a stage, it's like a show.
It's your persona that comes
Yeah,
out.
that's correct. And sometimes you forget and you live in that space for a while. But the reality is, I need to go back and then ask myself, you know, is that the reflection of that moment, how I would actually then think about me, what I learned, and how it can help me be better than just allowing the environment to sort of like rile you up all the time. It's okay. If I were to put it another way, it's like some people always tell me, or I tell myself, I tell my participants that what is important, and you say my family is important, my kids are important. I think we have to say that we are important first. I mean, from that context, that's where I'm coming from. And then when you get that right, and if I get that right, I think I give more.
Life lessons, beautiful words of wisdom from Go Ayat and also from Sherry Low. Business coaches, lecturers, co-authors, and of course, as you heard, close friends. My sincere thanks to Ayat and Sherry for sharing their journey on A Letter to Myself. I'm Joel Chua. You're listening to CNA 938.